Here we are right here at a southern plantation house. You may be asking yourself, what kinds of things went on in the plantation? Well, I'll tell you this right now. Sunglasses on, future looking so bright. I'll tell you that in the southern plantation, you had a large plantation owner that lived there that was probably the most wealthiest person in that particular community. In the time of the southern colonies, the plantation was in a community that functioned almost entirely on its own. It had its own bank, it had its own church, it had its own grocery store. They called them grocers at the time. They traded, they bought, they sold within that particular community, and it was so important to rely on each other. But the unfortunate reality is they relied heavily on slave labor, which was the source of contention all the way up until the Civil War. Now, slaves, as you know, are people that are pretty much kidnapped and then forced to work against their will and not paid one dime for it and treated harshly. This is also a place on the plantation where you'd have indentured servants working there as well. Indentured servants worked on a contract that was typically from 3 to 5 to 7 years, and it paid for the admission of Europeans that didn't have the money to pay the fare that come to the colonies. And once they worked, they were sometimes treated harshly too. Once they worked hard and worked the term of their contract, they were set free. Now, the southern colonies were a rich agricultural area that produced cotton, but not as much as they did in the Civil War times with the invention of the cotton gin. But they also produced indigo, they produced corn, they produced all kinds of crops that could be used, and tobacco was a big crop that was used to make cigars, to put in pipes, to be smoked, and that was actually traded within the 13 colonies, but also between England and other European countries as well. You may be thinking to yourself, yes, here we are in the South. We're in South Georgia, but you're thinking cotton is everywhere, right? In the 13 colonies, in the southern colonies, you'd be absolutely fundamentally wrong. With the invention of the cotton gin by Eli Whitney around the time of the Civil War, which changed the complexity of agriculture in the South, they actually relied on other means, such as they used this in small quantities, but they would use the fiber from flax. They would use many of the resources that they had immediately available to them, but cotton was something that you did not see a lot of in the southern colonies at the time, shortly before the American Revolution.
All right.
What would be one of the biggest cash crops? The source of so much contention during the time of the Civil War. How can a little bitty fibrous plant like this, that is used to make clothes and used to make fabrics of many kinds, how can this be the source of such great contention? The only thing is, with the invention of the cotton gin, you needed people to actually work the cotton in the fields and actually work the devices. But the problem is, with this resource being so readily availably harvested, you needed people such as free labor in the South to supply many of your demands to produce this right here. In the North, they've relied on lumber and relied on other industries to supply their needs for trade. But in the South, they relied on agriculture such as this. Slaves were treated harshly. They were indebted to slavery for their entire lives. Children were born into slavery. No wonder this is a source of contention, when especially the rich, large landowners were getting richer, and then the average Joe in the South was getting poorer. This is a big source of contention leading up to the Civil War, and with the Emancipation Proclamation given by President Abraham Lincoln, slaves were set free. But what to do with all this cotton? So here I am in the southern colonies region. As you can see, you see desks here. It may look a little bit of what you might think your current classroom looks like, but the fact of the matter is, it's done a lot of transformation since the time of the southern colonies. First and foremost, you may have your iPad handy, your cell phone handy. You may be working on a laptop computer, a desktop computer. Well, here, this is what you have. Right now, in the southern colonies, if you take a look at this soil right here, it is beautiful. It has a beautiful color to it. It is a healthy mixture of clay, which there's a lot of clay, especially in southern Georgia, but you have a good mixture of sand, clay, and large amounts of humus, which is the decayed remains of plant and animal organisms. It's mixed together that makes a very nutritional soil that plants thrive in.